Welcome, everybody. It is the 3 o'clock hour on Go Local Live. I'm Josh Fenton. We are at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center in rainy downtown Providence. I'm sure it's sunny in Central Falls.
Always sunny in Central Falls.
I'm here with Mayor James Diossa, Mayor of the city, head of the Chamber of Commerce, you name it, it's all good in Central Falls. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on such a beautiful day.
Is it hard to get out of Central Falls?
It is. So I appreciate the invitation.
We like having you on here. Yeah. Let's go around the horn, talk about all the big issues. Obviously, one of the biggest high-profile issues was the Pawtucket Red Sox, your next-door neighbor. You were a strong advocate of building a new stadium there. They're off in Worcester with an amazing deal that really wasn't going to be matched in Rhode Island. Nearly $100 million commitment from the city of Worcester, a couple $100 million of proposed additional investment in private investment. The state came forward with about, I think, 30 or 40 to rebuild Kelly Square, which if you are a daredevil, go drive Kelly Square in Worcester. It's the most incomprehensible intersection in the free world. What's the feeling in your town about the loss of the Paw Sox to the area?
So we were definitely very sad with the news. We were strong supporters of the city of Pawtucket, of the mayor, Gregg Ian, who took a strong leadership role in this project. We felt from the city's perspective that this was going to be complementary to the train station that's being built right on the border of Pawtucket and Central Falls. So we envisioned not only a venue for pleasure, but also the fact that we have mass transportation with available raw mill space, over 1 million square feet of mill space. So I think that in general, we were looking at the development that would spurn off from this great investment of a stadium.
So Worcester's got it. I think there's a lot of questions. From a news standpoint, what we saw was that there was just a disconnect to how most Rhode Islanders felt in the polling we had done with John Della Volpe from Harvard and what the offers were. Worcester's now got the burden. They've got to market that thing. News just came out this week. Minor League Baseball, I think, is off 14% over X period of time. Some are saying maybe Rhode Island won by not winning and escaped a potential another issue of overpromise, underdeliver. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, look, I'm biased because I love soccer, but I think soccer is a sport that's growing in this country, growing in this region. I think that receiving the news that the World Cup is coming back to the United States in 2026, I think there's an opportunity there that, maybe it's not baseball, maybe it's an opportunity to explore soccer and how it's growing in communities, especially in the Blackstone Valley. There's so much diversity there, people from Europe.
And in Providence,
exactly.
Absolutely 100%. Obviously, the grand prize is to try and get the Crafts to build the Revolution's new stadium. They're 3 years behind on the Major League Soccer requirement to have a soccer-only stadium and get out of Gillette Stadium, which is just not a good soccer experience. It's a huge stadium. It doesn't matter if you put 30,000 people in there, if the place feels empty. Portland, Oregon, where we have a Go Local site, they have a stadium right in the city. They've sold out every single game since they've been on. Yeah, and it's just, it's a great experience and great fan base, and every restaurant in the city is full on game day. I think you're 100% right. And Stephen Pryor was on about 3 weeks ago talking about looking at the Apex site as a potential other venue for maybe soccer or something else.
And I stand behind the mayor, so obviously his city and Central Falls is right behind them in any initiative he wants to take on.
While everybody was chasing the shiny object, and we've written about Memorial Hospital got closed in functionally January 1 of 2018, a huge economic impact to the Blackstone Valley, 800 jobs, about 600 full-time positions. Charter Care has stepped up and said, listen, we'd like to get that property. We'd like to open up, at minimum, an emergency room facility. That property is owned by Care New England. They're blocking that. They won't release the property. Is it time for state decision makers to intervene take it by eminent domain? Is it time for the city to take it by eminent domain? And we saw this winter huge problems with emergency room availability because of the closure of Memorial.
Yeah, look, I think the Blackstone Valley has felt the pains of not having the hospital open for immediate response. We now have to travel to Providence. I believe the mayor has been having ongoing conversations, this being the mayor of Pawtucket, and he definitely knows, and he's spoken about the need of an emergency. Maybe that is the first step.
Yeah.
Getting the emergency room open again with a few beds, and then relieve the burden on the other hospitals around the Providence area.
Miriam Hospital, which never really has seen backups in the emergency room, saw multi-hour backups almost the entire winter because of the closure of Memorial, because it's the closest hospital.
And Blackstone Valley Health is invested $15 million in Central Falls. They're building a brand new health facility, one-stop shop. It's called the Neighborhood Health Station. It'll be able to serve 90% of our population through primary care, mental care, physical therapy, pharmacy, radiology, urgent care. So we're hoping that once this facility opens at the end of November, we'll see some of the burdens relieved.
That's right. Is Mike Fine?
Yeah,
Dr. Mike Fine's involved with that. One of our all-time favorite guests, an expert on everything healthcare, and now becoming a prolific writer.
Oh, he is.
And just, super interesting, Renaissance kind of man. Let's talk about the train station. The train station really does create an opportunity for that Pawtucket Central Falls area to become de facto a suburb of Boston. One of the largest economic engines in the entire country. Boston is exploding. There's really no land if you want to live around Boston in any 30-minute drive time. You're talking about $1 million home up. Is that the game changer? Does that really just transform your two communities into a different place and allow you to take up the abandoned mill buildings and transform them for reuse?
We have to, I've learned more and more as I continue in this role that we have to look at things from a regional perspective, and how does the Blackstone Valley play into this regions? We have Providence literally 10, 15 minutes away. We have Boston 45 minutes by car.
45 by car?
By car.
2 hours by car?
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
40 minutes by train, 2 hours by car.
Okay. With the traffic, you're right.
Yeah.
So, how do we really benefit? How do we look at this train station? We know that the millennials love mass transportation. They love options. It's getting very expensive in Boston. But how do we make the Blackstone Valley be that regional between the Providence and Boston area? And I think there is an opportunity by having a train stop that bears the name of Pawtucket Central Falls, and seeing the investors coming up and investing. That's going to provide a lot of opportunities for affordable housing and affordable opportunities to start up a business, et cetera.
And is this the opportunity, what you're seeing now, some of this organic building as well as the train station, is going from dying, decaying, older to cool, hotspot to New England? Because ultimately, if you're working at a early stage job up in the Boston market making $40,000 or $50,000, there's no place you can live in that area. And even up to 75, you're almost pushing $100,000. You can't afford to live in that city. Is this kind of that cool opportunity? And then you can build the restaurants around it, et cetera.
I agree. And not only does it give us access to the work market up in Boston, but also education. We have a lot of our students that live in the Blackstone Valley travel up to Boston, so this would be much affordable and more efficient for the time to get up to Boston.
We're in the election season. We've seen some vibrant races on the Democratic side and the Republican side during the primary season. You've now got the group set. you've got Governor Raimondo running on keep the momentum going. You've got Mayor Fung running on sort of a mantra of, we need better, stronger leadership. You've got Joe Trillo running, saying, hey, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm the independent guy in this race. I'm going to shake things up. Rhode Island needs to be shaken up. You're a Raimondo supporter, obviously. What's your take on this race? And are we spending enough time? There's a lot of narrative about issues that don't seem to be that important, and a lot of missing issues that are really important to the state's future that isn't getting addressed at all.
Well, look, and you share this perspective. Having one term is not enough to fully implement the agenda that she's looking to do. I think she's done a good job. She's really taken the opportunity to listen to municipal leaders at the local level, hear the concerns. Through her efforts, we were able to get the train station rolling. Again, I think she needs a second term to really fully implement her agenda and roll out all her plans that she wants to do.
As a mayor, you've worked with Allan Fung over the past few years. Talk about him as a leader. What's the perspective that you've had working on municipal issues with him?
We share a round table at the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns. We have full conversations. I tell you one thing that there's no lines dividing us because of
League of Cities and Towns is not a big R versus D issue.
Correct.
It's trying to find solutions to municipal issues.
And he's a friend, but I'm a Democrat. I support the governor, and I think she needs 4 more years to be able to continue pushing her agenda forward.
Speaker Mattiello was on last week. Obviously, he's got some representatives who are starting to peel off. He has a tough re-election. I know Mayor Gregg Ian was frustrated with how he handled the Pawtucket issue. What's your thought? Is it time for new leadership in the House? Is it time to transform what's going on up at the General Assembly, or do you think he deserves another round?
I think the experience with the Pawtucket was devastating to us. I know that there's been comments made about what went wrong, what could have been done better. At the end of the day, I think I sympathize with the mayor of Pawtucket. He really put a lot of his political will into this, and I think that come January, I think there's going to be an evaluation on whether he's done a good job. He's been generally very good to the city of Central Falls, but this was an important issue for the Blackstone Valley, and I think that.
Are your reps and senators mad?
They're concerned. They're definitely concerned. But again, I think that everyone's going through their elections, and I think you'll see more conversations happen as the elections unfold.
On the statewide level, both Matt Brown and Aaron Ruggenberg lost in their primaries against Governor Raimondo and Dan McKee, respectively. What was the disconnect? I think there was predictions that the progressive movement was ready to take over Rhode Island, and Matt Brown, I think, may or may not have underperformed what the anticipation was. Aaron Ruggenberg came close, but Dan McKee held on. What's your analysis of, you're a Dan McKee guy, what's your analysis of why progressives didn't win those races, and what the impact is longer term?
So I played close attention. I really worked hard with the lieutenant governor in his race. Look,
you're a big Dan McKee guy.
Yeah, well, he's in the. We were colleagues as mayors. We sit on a board together, the Blackstone Valley Mayoral Academy. I think the reason why he performed so well in the Blackstone Valley is because, he's been known through many decades in that area. People have seen his work, so I think that that gained him a big stronghold in that area. I think the millennial movement it's going to take time. I think that as they start taking up seats, I think the agenda will.
Are you officially a millennial?
I am still a millennial.
You are
I am
still a millennial.
Yes.
Once a
I
millennial,
might not act like
once
one,
a
but-
millennial, always a
Yes,
millennial, I
yes,
believe.
1985.
You don't become a boomer or
No,
anything
no,
like
no,
that.
no,
Yeah,
no, no.
once you get older. it
Starting to
doesn't
get the
work
gray
that-
hairs, so
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
So
not
are you
like-
considered a senior citizen amongst the millennial movement?
Well,
And what happens to Aaron Ruggenberg? What's his role in the future of Rhode Island?
I think that he should continue being a voice. I think that it's good to have different perspectives out there. It's healthy for our politics in Rhode Island. And I would hope that he continues to be vocal and outspoken about how he feels about any discussion, because I think that will serve best for all of us to make a good decision.
Let's jump over to schools. We've been looking at schools a lot and writing about schools. You know, you've got 8th grade, don't hold me to it exactly, 8th grade math achievement scores in the city of Providence are at 3% proficient. I mean, that's about as immoral an outcome as you could possibly get. It's hard to argue that those kids would be any less proficient if they didn't go to school the entire year. Why is year after year, decade after decade, this isn't a blame game, why are we so ineffective at transforming our educational system and improving it, especially for those who live in the urban corridor? Why isn't there any urgency? You know, the governors don't talk about it. They're talking about school bonds, which you can say has some tie-in, and school safety, Mayor Fung, but they're not talking about 3% proficiency rates in math and science. If you're not proficient, by the way, proficient doesn't get you into Yale, right? Proficient just gets you to the next grade. We're talking about something in which kids, year after year, decade after decade, are completely ill-prepared to go into the workforce.
So it's a conversation I continuously have with our superintendent, who's been very vocal about that. The fact that kids in urban districts are in a sense not being talked about or prioritized. I think that there needs to be more of an emphasis, much more investment in ELLs, getting our teachers prepared in this area, and I think that it's not going to happen overnight. I know that for a fact.
But I was on the
mindset-
council. I was on the council when I was 26 years old in Providence. The scores were the same. I heard the same things. It's not going to happen overnight. It's 25 years
Yeah.
later. It's still not happening overnight. At what night does
Yeah.
it actually
Nope.
start to take place? Because we've still spending $17,000, $18,000 a head. Our per pupil spending is amongst the highest in the country, but generation after generation are at the absolute lowest of achievement in the country. When does the overnight become a little more urgent?
I know, and I think this is where our
When do you take off your shoe and start hitting this little table over here
So-
like Khrushchev?
And I have conversations about how important it is. And you're right. The conversation right now is in school construction, and that's, I think, important as well, because if you go to some of the schools in urban districts, they're in disrepair. The teachers don't have the latest technology, the best environments. The kids are going into buildings that some don't even have air conditioning or good heat in the winter. I think that even though that's not directly
I think it
but-
is somewhat related, absolutely.
But-
But there's no emphasis, and I'm not holding it to you. I'm talking about across the board. You know, it was interesting. We had the head of the Rhode Island Foundation, Neil Steinberg, on, and he had just done that Together RI. They had about 1,000 people into community meetings around the state, and he said the one major issue that there was kind of a consensus on, regardless Democrats or Republicans, was public education, the lack of performance of public education. And we look to our north and we see a state that is just booming. And it's booming all the time, and for 30 years they've had an absolute commitment, whether Democrats or Republicans, year in, year out. They have real test scores, they don't care about anything else, they're going to focus on achievement. The unions are along for it. Bad teachers get fired, real teachers get promoted, they get paid well. And here, you know, it's the same narrative and the lack of attention. Is it a third rail issue, and because GIST crashed and burned,
Well, I think
that
also-
nobody wants to criticize teachers?
No,
Is that part of it?
I think it's also, we have a lot to learn from the North, and the experts that I've had conversations said is that we as a state haven't been consistent with our education plan. And I think that they share similar demographics in some of...
Absolutely, but their test scores are significantly
Exactly.
better. They got poor kids in Lawrence and Lowell. Lawrence and
And they're
Lowell
performing.
perform better. You know, it's interesting because we have a site in Worcester. When the park test came out on Worcester, Worcester was all like depressed about how bad their scores were. Worcester scores were like Cumberland and Lincoln's. In Weston, Mass, they're 20 points higher on performance than in Barrington. You know, they're at 98th percentile. In Barrington, they're at 75% proficient. So, you know, when do we get the, you've got 2 years left.
2 years.
You're term limited out.
Term limited.
What do you want to achieve in these last 2 years?
I think I want to continue supporting the efforts on the train station. Hopefully it opens up before I leave office. We have an amazing...
How much money in hand do you have collected? Mostly federal money.
Federal money, yep. State money. The cities had to put up some money. The money's there. It's more about getting the project going. So that leaves me in a better state of mind, knowing that the money is there. It's just about rolling out the project. And DOT and the governor have been very involved and very supportive in moving this project along. We have an amazing partnership with Rhode Island College. They're going to be opening up a site in Central Falls where they do workforce development, et cetera. We have a very strong small business community, which is literally our backbone, and we try to be as supportive there. So I want to continue making City Hall very accessible. But I think in the next 2 years, I want to hopefully continue inspiring younger generations to get involved in the political world of Central Falls. As I look to hand off the baton, I want, you know, this continuation of new energy, new ideas into city government. So
September 25th, 2020, you'll be back here. Train station will be ready to go. Rick campus done. Education improved, and young people swarming into the political process.
Yes. I hope.
That's great. Mayor Diossa, thanks so much for coming on Go Local Live. Appreciate you coming in to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center, hometown heroes, and appreciate it. We're going to take a stop. Coming back up is Kate Nagel, and she's got more guests than you can shake a stick at.